Worship of saints.
Yes.
Sunday keeping.
Sunday keeping, absolutely. Easter, Halloween or All Saints' Day, Christmas.
Forgiving sins.
The what?
Forgiving sins.
Yeah, the priest being the one that can forgive sins. Yeah, all these things come from paganism. How about the daily sacrifice? The Mass. Paganism. Christ says, I know thy works, and where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is. And thou holdest fast my name, and hast not denied my faith, even in those days wherein Antipas was my faithful martyr, who was slain among you, where Satan dwelleth. Now, it is not likely that Paul was speaking here of a single individual named Antipas. So, since this is a prophecy, and we have symbolic language, we must understand that Antipas is symbolic. Then, what does it mean? Well, he says, Antipas is my faithful martyr. We think of martyrs as being people who are persecuted and killed. Well, that's true. But the word martyr in the Greek means witness. So Antipas is his faithful witness. Well, then what does Antipas mean? A-N-T-I, anti means against. P-A-S? Guess what that means? Papa, yes. So there were witnesses at this time who were witnessing against this rising papal power. They said, no, this is not Christian. This is not according to Scripture, and we can't have this. So Christ did have witnesses at this time. And yes, because of the way that they spoke out, they were tortured and killed for their witness. So Pergamos, Christ speaks about the doctrines of the Nicolaitans, which he hates, and he also speaks about the doctrines of Balaam. The Nicolaitans we've already discussed as being followers of Nicholas, and that they said we don't have to do anything, we don't have to keep the law, we don't have to whatever, because we've been saved. So they were antinomians. The doctrine of Balaam. Who's Balaam?
Supposed prophet of God. Was asked to prophesy against the Israelites so that they lose their conquering power.
Yeah, Balak wanted to conquer them. So he went and he hired this prophet of God, and he said, you go and you prophesy against them, and then I know they'll be condemned and I can conquer them. Well, Balaam thought he would do this. He thought he wanted the money that Balak was going to give him. And as he traveled along to go do his dirty deed, the angel of the Lord stood in front of him, and the only one that could see the angel of the Lord was his silly little donkey. Remember? So, at this time, there were leaders in the church who were doing the work of traitor, because they turned against God, and they turned against His will, and they turned against His truth for earthly gain. Baal seduced Israel into the heathen worship and whoredom there at Baal Peor. Just as they were getting ready to cross over into the border, you remember that they had all these Moabitish women that came in and infiltrated the camp, and they committed adultery and fornication and all kinds of stuff, sacrificed to idols. Well, that is the type that we find during this church period. So the twofold sin of adultery, of idolatry, and fornication, spiritual adultery, always go hand in hand. After centuries of persecution, Satan finally realized that he could not destroy God's church by attacking it from without. So he joined the church. If you can't beat them, join them. In order to ruin it from within, through an amalgamation with the world, he baptized paganism and said, this is okay, it's now Christian, we can do these things. It's okay. And through the union of church and state, which is papalism. During the Pergamus period, the transition between pagan Rome and papal Rome takes place. Here's a quote: the Pergamite period, in which true faith more and more disappeared from view, and clericalism gradually formed itself into a system, and the church united with the world, and Babylon began to rear its head aloft. Now, most of these quotes that I have that are in this are not from modern books on Revelation. Because as we studied in our first week, modern books written on Revelation take an entirely different view. They do not see Rome for what Rome truly is. This book was written in 1901. Constantine. Can you see that up there in the corner? Can you make out what it is? That right there?
The Cairo cross.
It's what?
The Cairo cross.
That's right. Constantine was a human agent through whom Satan accomplished his counterfeit system of church and state united. Constantine had this major battle that he was facing, and he didn't know what he was going to do. He's a pagan. And he claimed to have seen this symbol, Rho, which is R, not P. It looks like a P, but the capital R in Greek looks like a P. Superimposed over a key, an X. So it was Chi-Rho, which were the first two letters of the word Christos in Greek. And he claimed to have seen this emblem superimposed over the sun. So he was impressed, and he thought, well, this means that I shall go forth and I shall conquer in the name of Christ. And his pagan warriors all put this symbol on their shield. They weren't Christians, but they assumed this concept. Then he goes to the battle at Milvian Bridge, where he wins. So he thought that he won through this vision, that the power was given him to win this battle. And he had a modicum of conversion based on this, and passed an edict in 313, the Edict of Milan, in which he tolerated Christianity then. So persecution, that 10 years of persecution, that extreme 10 years of persecution that I talked about under Diocletian, came to an end under Constantine. This is some pictures here. You see that they put this Chi-Rho was stamped on coins, and if you look, you can see right here there's alpha, and right there is the omega Greek symbols. You also see here there's an alpha there and the omega symbol there. The stone face there is on a church in Spain. The symbol there in red, you see that all through pagan symbolism and whatnot. So it's very common that they have adopted this. Constantine signed into law the first national Sunday law in 321 AD. Now, this is his statement. It was signed March 7th, 321 AD. This quote is from Philip Schaff's History of the Christian Church. He said, "On the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and people residing in the cities rest, and let all the workshops be closed. In the country, however, persons engaged in agriculture may freely and lawfully continue their pursuits, lest by neglecting the proper moment for such operation, the bounty of heaven should be lost." People understand this as the first national Sunday law. Well, indeed it was. It was the first law that legalized Sunday as a day of rest. But it was a civil day of rest, not a religious day of rest. It closed shops, it closed judicial transactions, it closed banks. But it was not a law that demanded Christian worship. We need to understand that, because there's a distinction. But the Christians who were already becoming apostate at this time adopted this law and said, see, now we have something in place that we can promote our Sunday keeping. We now have the law of Constantine to stand behind us. Constantine's term for this word here was not the Latin word sabbatum. He didn't say on the venerable day of the Sabbath. He said on the venerable day of the sun. The term that he used was not even the didomini that Pope John Paul, in his document that he wrote, 6-7 years ago. Didomini, the day of the Lord. It was a document that he promoted that is available on the internet. You can get it and read it. He talks about the day of the Lord and how we're to honor the day of the Lord. Constantine didn't even use that term. He used the true term. His term was die solis.